My opening statement was Luke looks like he's 10 years younger. And if I had a beard, I would get rid of mine if it made me look younger like he is today. So, other than that, I'm good to go.
All right, questions for Coach. Go ahead, Corey.
Well, Kevin, first of all, for you, just obviously going up against Duke tomorrow, obviously the two programs have had their struggles recently, but how significant is this game for your team, especially?
Well, Corey, I think it's an important game for us for several reasons. Obviously, since I've been here, we've always talked about trying to go on winning streaks, and we just obviously lost our last game. But more importantly, it's another home game for us. It's an opportunity to take a step forward in the ACC in this crazy year, and so the game is important for us, no matter who we were playing. But it is a great opportunity for our guys. It's another opportunity for our young guys to get to have a chance to play, and then you know the other big thing, Corey, is just to have the game to be played. I'm always nervous about all of these games up until the time we tip off. When you look at it, I think they were Carolina and Miami was set to play a game, last weekend or a few days ago, and 2 hours before the game, there wasn't any game, and so I just want the game to happen. We're blessed to be able to play any game that we can play, but we need to play the game because obviously I want our guys to continue to play.
Thanks, Kevin.
Go ahead, James.
Hey, Kevin, what have you seen from Duke's personnel and some of the things that maybe concerns you with them?
Well, they're talented. They're probably one of the most talented teams in our league. When you look at the fact that Hurt is playing tremendous basketball as a sophomore, he is as tough a matchup in our league as there is because, sometimes they play him at the five, sometimes they play him at the four, and he causes problems at both positions because at the five he can drag your five out and he can shoot threes, and then obviously at the four he can post up a smaller guy. So it presents a lot of problems for you, but their freshmen are as talented as any group in the country. Unfortunately, and I'm sure Coach K would probably say the same thing. What's probably hurt them more than anything is really not having a non-conference, and where those guys could get a little bit more experience. And obviously they would be a little bit different or have a different record probably if they would have had that. Similar to us, the big difference in us is that just losing Devin Daniels kind of changed our whole roster right away. So, but they're talented. They get out and run. They do a good job. They can make threes. They got personnel that can drive the basketball to the hole. They got good size. They shoot the basketball. So it's a really good team that we're gonna play against.
And just to follow up, both teams have had issues closing out games. I mean, they've lost a lot of close games. You guys have lost a lot of close games. Have you seen anything that's similar between the two teams relative to that?
I just think at the end when you add one or two young guys to the mix, I think it causes some problems. Obviously for those guys, they've been mostly young guys, except for Matthew Hurt and Wendell Moore. And Wendell wasn't playing well early, and now he's playing great now. And I think when you have so many young guys and the ball's in different people's hands, I think it makes a big, huge difference. You look at both of us in the last year or two, we both had the same point guards who typically have the ball in their hand and can make plays, and now it's shared between different people. And I think that makes a huge difference.
Thanks, Kevin.
Go ahead, Luke.
You mentioned playing without Devin. I mean, do you feel like you're any closer to figuring out, your identity, your rotation? He was such an important part of your team, and it seems like there have been times since he was out where guys are kind of looking at each other. Jericho obviously has had some big games, but some of the turnovers and obviously Syracuse's zone had a lot to do with that. But just that process, I mean, where do you feel like you are in terms of figuring out who you are without him?
Yeah, Luke, that's $1 million question. And the question is, and I'll answer it in a couple ways. The identity of our team has shifted. We have become more of try to get the ball inside as much as we can. There's no secret that right now the strength of our team is coming from our power forward and center position. When you talk about Jericho and you talk about DJ and obviously Manny Bates. It's different and it's weird because we played basically, and I think he's been out for 4 games, but 3 of those games have been, against teams with a unique defense. Syracuse twice, and then Virginia, who runs a great pack line. And so, am I any further along trying to figure out our situation? Probably not, because of the group of guys that we played in the last 4 games. But I have seen some improvement in some guys. I've seen, what we've asked for, and I know we talk about this all the time after the call, is just getting, consistent guard play from someone. We've kind of had it in different folks, but we haven't had it where 2 or 3 of those guys have played great on one given night. When you look at Shaquille Moore, he had obviously the really good game in Boston College, and then we got something from Thomas Allen, who hadn't played well, and he played a good game. And so if I can get one more of those guys to be a little bit more consistent, I think a guy like Braxton Beverly is kind of giving us everything that he can on both ends of the floor. But if I can get one more consistent scorer, and that guy doesn't have to have 15 points a night, just somebody around a 10 points a game, and then obviously one guy to get a hot hand, it makes our team better. We knew coming into this season that Devin Daniels was going to either give us, coming to the season, he was going to give us anywhere from 14 to 20 points a game. We just knew that. And now you don't have any built-in guys that that can get you those points. And so we've got to do it by committee.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was wondering, Kevin, your evaluation of the season DJ's had thus far. I guess from the outside looking in, he seems a little enigmatic at times. How do you think things have gone for him this year?
I think he's having a great year. I really do. I think he's improved in a lot of areas. I think he's given us and I get to see it from a different standpoint than you guys a lot. His leadership has been the best I've ever seen from him. He's that voice in the locker room. He's scoring the basketball for us. I thought he was playing really good basketball at the end of the year. A couple areas where he hasn't, obviously been as good as he hasn't been. He's still one of the top offensive rebounders in our league, but he hasn't rebounded at an elite level like he was at the end of the year. But as far as what we need him to score the basketball, I think he's been effective. He's not a liability guarding guys on the perimeter as he typically was, because when we switch 1 through 4, I know inside that he's going to be okay. But, he's had now to switch off on smaller guards. And at times, even though he can move his feet, those guys were blowing by him. And so, man, if you see him in the light that I see him, he's probably the happiest he's ever been. And he's very upbeat. And even though we have lost more games than we've had in the past with him, he's been a positive influence for us. So I have to give him credit, because I've been one of the guys that's been really tough on him. But the way he's handled himself through this stretch has been incredible.
Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, Kevin, when you have a team that's kind of struggling a little bit, do you coach them different? Maybe practice, love them up a little bit more, break them down a little bit more? Or is it important for a coach to stay consistent? Just how, because we don't get to see practice. How's things going to practice? How are you coaching the guys right now during this time?
Well, it's a great balance that you have to have. And so I lost the guy that I could get on the most, and he would respond. And so one of the biggest things with coaching, as it changes from 3 years ago or even 4 or 5 years ago, one shoe don't fit them all. And so, with this group, especially when you have some younger guys, you have to figure out how to motivate them. Some guys are very easily motivated by just tapping them or bringing them over, putting your arms on them, telling them, what they need to do better. Some guys you have to jump on and really get after them a little bit. Well, Devin Daniels, the older guys, and Braxton Beverly, kind of, when I think of those guys, I think of those guys as old school players. They respond by you jumping on them. The newer generation of younger kids, you have to really sit down with them, and most of them are visual learners. Most of them you have to take on the floor and show them where they're making mistakes. And so I've given a dose of everything, trying to get a good balance of making sure that we stay consistent to what we've done in the past to be successful, and then also obviously understanding that I've got a new group of younger guys. I went from a Markel Johnson, CJ Bryce, Devin Daniels, and throw Braxton in there to guys who just respond while coaches really, getting excited and getting on them, to a bunch of guys that, 17, 18, 19 years old that really, you gotta sit down and teach them. They all came from different programs, some really good programs, but in order for them to pick up your system, you gotta be more of a teacher than anything right now.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Kevin, I'm sure you've probably seen some about the situation with UNC players the other night after the Duke win. And I'm not asking you to comment on UNC's situation, but obviously those guys doing that, they're coming off a big rivalry win. You guys had your own big rivalry win over UNC this year, and you have a chance at another. What's the conversation like of asking guys to make sure they're still being safe when emotions are running high after a big win like that? And how tough is it, to tell these kids that they can't celebrate and, enjoy a big win the way they normally would?
Andrew, my answer to this question will have zero to do with Carolina, because I'm not into that program. And obviously, I don't know what was said and what was not said about what those guys did. But I will tell you, man, it is, this is when we go back to saying it is so tough to be a college student right now. I mean, what do you expect them to do? And I know we're going to say, man, yeah, well, you expect them to, do all of the right stuff and not be around other people. And I'm sure Roy, just like myself, and I'll go back to, I give example about Super Bowl. I instructed them that there will be no Super Bowl parties. You couldn't be involved with a Super Bowl. Same thing, we won the Carolina game here on, I think, December the 22nd. And we had to talk about, obviously trying to celebrate amongst ourselves. But it's hard, man. I mean, think about, your coaches or your parents telling you something that you shouldn't have done and you probably went out and did it. You want to know the big difference in when I was growing up and these guys growing up now? There were no camera phones. So we probably did some of the same things that these kids are doing, and they're being kids and they're having a good time. But unfortunately, there's ability, that phone that we have can change the narrative of anything real quick. And so, I've asked my guys to just do the right thing, and the right thing is try to protect us in our bubble. But honestly, when because of NCAA rules, I'm not around them, after they leave practice and we have them. I don't know what they're doing at nighttime. I trust that they're doing the right thing, but there's no way to know that they're not. So I'm not judging the Carolina situation. I don't know the whole story, so it wouldn't be fair for me. I can only tell you what we try to do, and I'm not saying that it's working or not, because after we beat Carolina here, those guys could have went and had a big time party, and maybe the video just didn't get released. So I don't know.
Thank you.
Anything else for Coach Keatts? All right, Coach, that looks like that's all we got.